downstate, massive amounts of millions of dollars held by the state of Illinois. I hope that money will be released in a timely fashion. It's certainly important for the continued professional care of people in our state. But I'll return to Washington Monday for a debate at the federal level, which may even have a greater impact on the people living in this area as well as the institutions and the providers. And I want to describe it to you for a moment. About 6 years ago, we passed the Affordable Care Act, and the purpose of that was to try to reduce the number of uninsured people in America, try to reduce the rate of growth in health care costs, and to improve the quality of care across our nation. Those were at least the stated goals. We've achieved some of those, but not all of them, and we've run into some challenges in terms of the future of this legislation. We've achieved the reduction in uninsured people by 50% in our state. There are 50% fewer people uninsured than there were when we passed the Affordable Care Act. I saw a local newspaper not published in this town who got that wrong, but there has been that dramatic reduction in uninsured. Where do people find their insurance? Two major sources under the bill. First is through the Medicaid program. The federal government pays 100% of the cost to the state of Illinois for people who are in lower income categories and qualify for Medicaid. In addition to that, there are people whose income takes them to a different place, and we have insurance exchanges. It's about 6% of the total number of people with insurance that are in the individual insurance exchanges. And that's where we've run into problems, and that's where you read the news stories, where some of the premium costs have gone up, the number of the providers have gone down. There's been some real turmoil. It reflects a number of things. First, people who are older and sicker are quick to buy into the insurance exchange because that's their option for health insurance. And if they're in lower income categories, they get a subsidy to help pay for the premium. But if you happen to need an insurance exchange in the individual market and you happen to be healthy and younger, people aren't buying in. So the insurance pool is too small, the premium's too high. And that's a problem that needs to be fixed. I'll be the first to admit I'm glad I voted for this bill. I think it was an important bill, but it's not perfect. And like every other piece of legislation, it needs some help and some change now. I've always said that the only perfect law was carried down the side of a mountain on clay tablets by Senator Moses. The rest of the efforts that we've made can take some improvement and some benefits. So what we have now is a debate about what is the future of the Affordable Care Act. And some of the proposals that have been made on the Republican side are worrisome. Worrisome to me and to many of the medical professionals in our state. What they are proposing is a dramatic cut in Medicaid. Medicaid does many things in our state, and when you hear the litany of things that we do with Medicaid, you can understand why the notion of cutting it at this point is controversial. For example, we not only have the people who, 650,000 in our state, who have health insurance through the new Medicaid expansion, we have the traditional Medicaid. Traditional Medicaid has paid for, and does pay for, 50% of the children born in the state. That's prenatal care for mom, delivery of the baby, and aftercare for mom and the baby. 50% of them rely on Medicaid. People who are disabled rely on Medicaid as their source of health insurance. A woman in Champaign said to me yesterday, my 23-year-old autistic son counts on Medicaid. Without Medicaid, I would have to put him in an institutional program, which would cost over $300,000 a year. Medicaid is a lifeline for her. Medicaid is also an essential element of funding school districts. Go to your local school district and ask them about their Medicaid payment into the school district for special ed students. They receive money for counselors, money for transportation, even money for feeding tubes for some children who are severely disabled. So Medicaid pays money into the local school district. But the largest expense for traditional Medicaid, I haven't even mentioned, and that's for your mom, your grandmother, your dad, and your grandfather. When they're in nursing homes, 2 out of 3 rely on Medicaid to pay for their medical bills. Social Security, Medicare make the payments, but they aren't enough. They need Medicaid. So when the proposal comes out of the House, as it did several weeks ago, that we freeze the Medicaid payment to the state of Illinois, which happens to be the lowest level of Medicaid reimbursement in the United States of America, that we freeze it and over a period of years reduce it, there are concerns expressed across the board. by doctors and hospitals, pediatricians, nurses, and most of the medical disease groups have said this is a recipe for disaster. Hospitals won't be receiving adequate payment in Medicaid. Many more people will come in for charity care. They'll receive it, and their costs will be passed along to others. And so we've got to do better. There was an encouraging development yesterday, and I listened for all the encouragement I can find. And it came from none other than the Republican leader, Senator McConnell. He was in Kentucky, and he was talking about the difficulties running into finding the votes for Medicaid repeal. And he said, maybe we need to sit down with the Democrats and see if we can work something out on a bipartisan basis. I almost applauded my friend Senator McConnell publicly for saying that, because that's where we should have started in the process that we've used over and over again. This bill was given to us in the Senate 6 days before we were supposed to vote on it. This bill has never had a hearing, never had experts analyze it. We just received the analysis from the Congressional Budget Office, which says 1 million people in Illinois will lose their health insurance because of the Republican proposal in the House. We can do better than that. I'll readily concede that this bill needs to make changes, and I'll be glad to sit down at the table on a bipartisan basis to do it. But let's not give up on the basic. The basic thing behind this bill was the notion that every American is entitled to access to good quality health care. And I don't mean access as in drive by and look through the window. I mean access to doctors and hospitals that take care of the needs of you and your family. Secondly, to make sure that health insurance plans that you buy are worth buying. Think back before the Affordable Care Act. If you or your family had a pre-existing condition, buying a health insurance policy might not be possible. And if it were possible, it might be too expensive. Secondly, we had lifetime limits on policies. People said, I've got the greatest health insurance in the world, and it covers up to $100,000 in costs. Tomorrow's accident, tomorrow's diagnosis would blow off $100,000 in no time at all. We got rid of that. Think of the old health insurance plans that used to say, oh, incidentally, when your kids go to college, you can no longer keep them on your family plan. We changed it and said you've got to be able to keep your children on your family plan until they reach age 26. Have you had any kids in your family graduate college? I have. How many of them quickly found that good job with benefits? Not many. They needed to stay on my plan until they could find that job. And that's what we think should be the standard across the United States. So we have a lot of issues that concern us, and my allies in talking about stopping the current bill and coming up with a better bill have included representatives of the Illinois Hospital Association and the hospitals, particularly in downstate Illinois. And that's why it's good to be in Gateway, because we're talking about what the future will be for this hospital and for many others just like it. Ed Cunningham is the CEO and will give his perspective along with a few others who will follow. Ed?
Thank you, Steve.